Hi, I am Kristen Arnold from Group 1.
Hi, I'm Julie Rentz from Group 1.
I'm Kelly O'Brien from Group 4.
And I'm Kayla Schweikert from Group 4. We are starting this meeting with Kelly and I as the supervisors and Kristen and Julie as the supervisees. So for Group 1, first off, we just wanted to say that it's very clear that you worked very hard on this project. There are a lot of details. It's obviously very well thought out. You paid clear attention to instructions and requirements, and it's very obvious that you all worked very hard on this. So congratulations on a really good project.
Thank you.
Yeah. So some specifically some things that stuck out to us that we really liked. We thought the modeling and role play scenarios were really well thought out, very organized. It was very clear. And the trainer would have lots of information to go off of. There would be, I think, no question of what they're supposed to be doing, and details. There were no details lacking. And so you really provided great resources for the trainer. And I can see that you really put yourselves in the trainer's shoes and really thought about what the trainer in this situation would need. So we really liked that. The section on choosing between differential reinforcement and non-contingent reinforcement is a tough one, and you guys found really good research to support what you wrote about. You made sure to be very thorough. It was well documented, and I think a trainer using that specific section of this manual would be very well supported in having a firm knowledge of what they would need for answers if they had questions from their trainees, and just have a solid understanding on that. So way to go. That was a hard section.
Thank you.
And then, just overall, I think you guys really went above and beyond on a lot of your sections. So really great job, working really hard. We can see your hard work. So super job.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So some of the more content related feedback that we have for you guys is one specifically on the training timeline. We really liked that you guys once again really thought through all of this, and there's a lot to consider, and there were parts that weren't necessarily a requirement, but we thought were really nice that you included, such as having a prep time for the trainer before the trainees came in for training. And we really liked the Post-it note idea. I thought that was a good way to incorporate some training acceptability to make sure that the trainees are feeling like they have time to ask their questions and really feel solid in what they're learning. And then we also really like that you provided frequent knowledge checks throughout the training, not just within the PSI, but throughout training, you provided those knowledge checks, which I think is very beneficial for learning. So with the timeline, one thing that we would recommend is maybe simplifying some of the sections as far as going over FBIs and FBAs and FAs and all of that. We thought, in our opinion, that it maybe wasn't related to the direct care staff that's in this scenario. And so maybe just simplifying it to focusing more on just your differential reinforcement intervention. And, you know, I like how you included specific sections on escape. But I think for the purpose of this specific training and considering the audience, we just thought that maybe it would be a little bit too complex and maybe overwhelming for the direct care staff to go over those specific ABA complex procedures. But yeah, and then Kelly's got the next one. And if you guys have questions along the way, feel free to jump in. We'll definitely ask you guys at the end as well. But
Yeah.
Were you guys, like I remember when I was the one who wrote about the direct care staff, and they kind of gave us like a description of the staff, and it was like a sign. Did you guys have that as well?
yes.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
That was it.
Cool.
And so then the next part that we wanted to talk about was your trainer qualification section. And you guys did a very nice job with discussing all of their roles and also discriminating them from one another. And I think we all thought that it was really nice that you have the qualities of the trainer and also their qualifications and their, like, regarding their education and certification. And it gives a very clear idea of exactly who is going to be there, which we thought was super helpful. One minor tweak that we would suggest would maybe be to have them consistent in their formatting. It did look like there was some parts that were written in a paragraph and others that were in bulleted lists, which I think you guys had all of really helpful information, but if it is in a manual, it might be a little bit easier if it were in a bulleted list or paragraph form, just to make it consistent. But this section overall had very great information and did a nice job of discriminating the two of them.
Can I intervene? I did really like that you guys, further down when I was talking about the client population, and going over some of the different, like the comorbid, the conditions. I like that you guys made the comment to go back to make sure that some of those, like the CPI training and the seizure training, was in that the qualifications for those trainers as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know where exactly that was, but I remember reading that. I was like, that makes sense.
Yes, it's helpful to have an extra pair of eyes that haven't read
Yeah.
the text before.
That was just a connection. You know, we talked about how this document is always connected throughout, and so that was just something I hadn't thought of. So
Mhm.
And we also really liked the amount of detail that you guys provided with giving more information about those comorbid conditions, as
Yeah.
a lot of us might not be familiar with all of those. So I think that was also really helpful.
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then something else that a section that we wanted to highlight was the role play section within section 5.
Okay.
And this was very well done. We thought the bulleted instructions, the way that that was organized, the instructions for the trainer, was well organized. It made it easy to read and very clear, especially in a manual where there's a million appendices. It seems like that organization is really important. So we thought you did a really nice job in this section with listing that out in a clear way. And we really liked also how you specifically defined when the trainer would need to intervene in role play situations and when it would be okay to let the role play continue. You gave lots of examples for those situations, which I thought was helpful guidance for the trainer. One thing that we had noted was there seemed to be some hinting of modeling in kind of the initial part of this role play section. So just looking to clearly separate those two. Obviously there's some overlap and they seem similar at times, but making it clear that the modeling is just with the trainers and then the role play would be, you know, involving the trainees in the role play.
Yeah,
And
I
then,
remember seeing that I think that was actually in section 3, but no, I agree
oh,
with
was
that.
it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
totally agree.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the only thing in
Yeah,
there.
I totally agree with that. I do think that yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
The next part that we wanted to touch on was section 5. We were all very, very impressed with the amount of detail in this section. But only in thinking about the audience, with it being geared toward direct care staff, it seems like some of the content in section 5 might be geared a little bit more towards like us as graduate students rather than direct care staff. Just one example that we were thinking about, maybe using slightly simpler terms such as running away instead of elopement, which I know is defined in the vocabulary section, but just
Mhm.
for the ease of the reader. Um, Also, with determining which intervention to use, since it is the job of the supervisor, maybe using um, more layman's terms in this section could be helpful too.
Can you give me an example of that within the section? Sorry, I'm kind of putting you on the spot. I didn't mean to.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we had noticed, I think specifically in the PSI, we had noticed like elopement, and since it would be for the direct care staff, um, it's hard to know, right? Like they're going to need to learn these terms anyway, but also,
Right.
let's consider where they're at. So it's,
Mhm.
it's kind of a toss up, but we thought, maybe using some simpler terms, that's just one example.
Yeah.
Of that. And then I can't remember specifically um, where it might have been also in the PSI, or somewhere else in the materials where I
I
think it
can
was
maybe scroll down and see if there's an example.
okay. Yeah.
And
I
if
think
not, like, feel free to go in and comment after this. I didn't mean to like put you guys on the spot. That's tough.
yeah, no worries. And
But
yeah,
it's
there's
always
probably
nice to have like, a stranger test as well.
Yeah,
So
mhm, yeah.
definitely.
So yeah, I'm sure there's comments in there as well, but yeah.
okay.
Um, And then, so speaking of the PSI, we wanted to highlight that really nice material for the direct care staff. I thought it was nice that it wasn't super long. It wouldn't be overwhelming, especially being one of the first things that the direct care staff is doing. I really liked the tone that you guys used in your audio files. I thought it was upbeat and encouraging, and I thought the organization of it was simple. It wasn't too overwhelming with tons of graphics and charts and pictures, but enough so where it wasn't boring. So I thought you guys had a good balance in that. One thing that we thought might be helpful for direct care staff is having just one knowledge question per slide. And then it would also be just functionally a little bit easier to click, like if you could like click the actual answer and then it would take you to a slide depending on whether they got it right or wrong. We thought that might just be a little bit more functional. And then the organization just overall, I think there was a lot of good information on there that was very useful for learning the intervention. And I think you guys stuck to that scope. But we thought maybe breaking up, not adding more information, but just breaking up the information a little bit into more slides. That way it's not as overwhelming. I think for, maybe staff that has some experience or graduate students, it would be totally fine, not a problem. But considering direct care staff that English is maybe not their first language and this is maybe their first, job out of retail or whatever, I think that might be a little bit more useful. And then lastly, On slide 15, oh, this is where it indicates that. So on slide 15, it states that it's the therapist's job to decide what the rate or what the intervention goal would be, or what the rate is. And so just making it clear that that would be the supervisor's job, and they would simply be implementing whatever the supervisor sets as the criterion.
Okay. Cool.
All right, I got that noted.
Sorry?
Got it noted.
Okay.
And again, going back to the amount of detail that you guys have put in has been very helpful. And I know that there's so much information that we had to cover in this.
Mhm.
It is very long, although I know there is so much information that we need to explain within the manual. So we were noticing that there were some places where there were ethics tables that didn't appear in the professor's template. So I'm not sure if all of those, they definitely are helpful, but I'm not sure if they could be cut out in order to just make it a little bit less long, maybe a little bit less overwhelming. We also looked at the background information with modeling and role play. You guys provided great information with both of those, but maybe we noticed that some details in that might be able to be taken out without losing content or clarity within that.
Is that in section 3?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, is this in section 3 or 5?
Probably this.
I think in section 5.
Yes.
Oh, you mean in the scenarios? Are you
Right, yeah,
talking about the scenarios or the literature?
the scenarios.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Can you
I
give
know
us an example of something that you feel like might have been in there that was not necessary?
yes. Let me see it for a second. So I think just like overall, it could be, maybe some simplified a little bit. So I think, knowing the severity level is great. How, the individual communicates is obviously important. But, as far as like incorporating, the specific type of assessment, I think you could simply say like a preference assessment was, or like even just stating their highest preferred reinforcer, like in the moment, Cody is most motivated for his Rubik's Cube or whatever it is. Since, although that information is important, I remember it was noted that consider this training like there was a separate training on preference assessments and whatever for the trainees. And so I think it would just simplify it for the trainer where it wasn't so overwhelming to read through everything. And then by the time they get to the bottom of the scenario, they're like, wait, what did I just read? So yeah, there's obviously a fine balance. And we do like the information you have. I think it may just be a little overwhelming for the trainer.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously constructive feedback is always hard to take. So please don't hear this as tearing apart your project. We really did like it and think you guys knocked it out of the park and clearly worked really hard on it. So good job.
Thank you.
So we wanted to open, we've got a couple minutes left. So we definitely want to open the floor to you for any questions that you guys have.
Okay. I think we've kind of been asking questions throughout. I saw that there's a lot of grammatical things, so we'll go back and fix that. And then I guess
Sure.
one thing I did want to kind of hit on, because I know that it's something that came up in the initial template for the whole training. It said that the ethics code should be included in all sections 1 through 4. And it said if it was missing the table to add it. And so I think that's why we added it. So that might be something both groups need to look into to make sure that I'm correct in that information. Because it said that if it wasn't there in sections 1 through 4 to add it in, add in your own.
Yeah, that's a great catch. And we very well easily could,
That's okay. And we're working together, right?
Yes. So.
This project had so much information.
And it was,
so,
yeah, for sure.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, between both of our groups, we probably had 10 eyes, and there's still some information we still need to check throughout the end of the semester.
Oh, yeah.
So
we were constantly like going through everything. But overall, I really think that the feedback that you guys provided, even within the document, was very helpful. And some of it was like stuff that we didn't think about or little grammatical things. I also noticed when I download the document to Word, all the grammatical things pop up. So I fix it on there, and I didn't find a good way to like put it back onto here. So it was like fixed before I turned it in, but I couldn't get it back onto here. So I'm just gonna have to go through the whole thing before we turn it in. So
yeah,
but thank you for all of the time that you guys put into finding those little things for us to fix.
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's see.
All right.
Julie, did you have any specific questions?
No, I read through the comments and like talked with our other group members, and I feel like based on like the feedback that you gave us, it'll be really beneficial to meet with them when we do and like talk through it. I think you guys made a lot of really good points. So like I agree with everything everybody's saying. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
There were also a couple of sections where it seems like I noticed that Candace commented on here that the manual template had been accidentally deleted. So that's helpful too, to go back and look at that as well. We haven't made any changes on this because we wanted to meet with you guys first. Actually, we put it here, but I highlighted it because I'm like, that wasn't there before, but I don't want it to look like I changed it.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Do we feel good about ours, Julie? You have any other questions?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, thank you for your feedback.
Yes.
Both within written and verbal. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
So you guys ready to switch?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if it would be beneficial for someone else to share their screen on the actual document so that I could pull up our written feedback.
Right. Yeah, that'd probably be easier.
So let me change this there. So someone else would be able to share their screen.
Yes,
I wonder if since I'm recording though.
It should probably still work. I can try.
Okay.
Let me see.
Maybe I think it records my whole screen though. We'll see.
Also, if it doesn't work out, I can just take notes based off of what you guys say.
Okay.
And so you don't need to worry about pulling it up if that's.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Does this work?
Yes. Okay. Cool. So we did our feedback a little differently. I'm sure you probably already read through it. But we did it by section. And so we'll probably just, if it's okay with you, probably just start from the top and go down.
Yes. Get it up there. And then just
again,
to be clear for Dr. Feibig, so now Kristen and Julie will be the supervisors, and then Kayla and Kelly from group 4 will be the supervisees.
Thank you. Okay, so for starting in the beginning, the purpose, you guys did a great job embedding the comments. Kristen, did you go over the purpose section?
No, I haven't gone over any. So we noticed that Candace went in and deleted a lot of our comments today. And I think she was working on editing your information. And so a lot of our comments are gone. But we did
Okay.
have feedback from like our written feedback, and it looks like she put an additional like, hey, we changed it.
Okay. Yeah, I think she was working on it today. But yes, I can attest that you guys have lots of good comments on here.
Okay. Julie, did you want to go over the purpose?
Yeah, so the feedback that we had was it was very strong. I did not read through the purpose, so I'm reading through like the other group members' notes. They said you did a great job, and there's some embedded comments which I believe were resolved. And then capitalizing intervention names was something that they brought up. So I don't remember, Kristen, if
I do think that's something that I think that on our document, we capitalized all the intervention names. And I think on one of your comments on ours was that they needed to be lowercase.
Right.
So I think that that's one thing that both groups might need to look into, what the proper way for that is, because
PA format.
yeah, like the proper format for like, yeah, for stuff like that, because I do think that's one thing that we kind of disagreed on, based off of
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah, I
Julie,
noticed that and thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But I did look in the APA manual, and
Okay.
it doesn't have specifically for interventions. It doesn't give guidelines, but it does give specific guidelines on like disorders.
Okay.
So stuff like autism spectrum disorder should be lowercase.
Okay.
And so I just kind of inferred from that
Yeah.
if disorders are going to be lowercase, probably interventions are too.
Okay.
But I know that's something that is always kind of up in the air.
Yeah. Well, thanks for looking that up.
Yeah.
As far as if you could scroll down or for the trainer qualifications, we thought you hit all of the requirements. Great job. I thought it was very thorough. I know she's also made some adjustments to this section as well, I believe today. But we thought that it was great, and I looked over it and I thought it was still great. So nice work.
Great, thank you.
If you could go to the client and student population section. So just one thing that I noted, and I believe she added in a paragraph today stating this already, but previously I just noted that to make sure that you stated how you would adapt connections with caregivers who work multiple jobs, primarily speak a language other than the one you speak fluently, and whose views about caregiver involvement might be different than the ones held in your culture. So just being mindful and having accommodations for those types of diverse families. I believe she added she added a paragraph right here about the circumstances are different and adding multilingual. So I think that that's appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that note. I think that was a good note. So yeah, it looks like Candace recently added it.
Yeah. And then again, in the setting, the only thing that we noted is to capitalize intervention names. But again, I think that we've solved that already. Other than that, it looked good. Go ahead.
For the setting and staff description, it was very straightforward, very clear, and we didn't have any feedback. We said that it was really well organized in those two sections. They looked really great. For the training objectives, one of the questions that our group member had was, she was saying that if the staff don't achieve a 90% on the guided notes portion of the training, what will be the procedure? On the timeline, it says that they will not move on to the next step, but it's not noted there. So she wanted, I think she was just kind of suggesting some clarification about that there, or even just referring to the appendix may be another option. But overall, the objectives were really specific and measurable, and that was a really, really nice, clear section of the manual.
Okay, yeah, thanks for catching that. That's a good catch.
Okay. So your PSI looked really, really good. I was super impressed. I did like you mentioned in ours having two and having one question. I really liked how yours, when you clicked on the right answer, it took you to this side. If you clicked on the wrong answer, it automatically took you back. So that's definitely something that I'm going to consider as far as making adjustments to ours. I thought that was really, really nice. I thought it was visually appealing, well researched. So great job on that. And then one of our group members said that some sentences, okay, I think this was meant to be, hold on, I'm confused. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Ignore me. I skipped ahead to your PSI. I apologize.
No worries.
Looked at the wrong section. Okay, so section 2, training methods overview. It looked good, just some minor editing suggestions embedded. Julie, was this your comment on here?
No, this wasn't my comment. So the comment is quoting, it says, will role play the implementation of the intervention in response to the target behavior. And I believe the comment is that we are, I don't really know if that makes sense. We are including certain skills, tasks in our role play and scenarios for trainees to see DRL being implemented. We are targeting behaviors associated with these skills tasks presented. I believe that this was actually fixed and resolved when earlier today. So I think we can move on to the PSI.
Okay. Okay, so PSI, well-researched, time and clearly put into this. One of our group members suggested that some sentences and paragraphs were confusing and consider paragraph number 4 for simplifying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she made a comment about it right there.
Yes, I see it. Yeah, I appreciate that. I wrote this section and I can get wordy sometimes. So I appreciate someone else reading it and saying, that's too much.
Yeah. Again, it's that stranger test that's always helpful.
Very helpful.
Your role-playing section looked good, just a few embedded comments. Your coaching and performance feedback looked great. Again, just some minor edits in the document.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went through that one. It was really clear. It was really easy to read, and the purpose of it came across really well. The training acceptability was also really minor edits on that one. There was one part that I read through. So in the document, it says, I'm trying to figure out which paragraph this would be. So this is paragraph 2. It says, it'll be beneficial to the DCF for you to speak at a slower pace and repeat key points using synonyms, since several of the DCF use English as their second language. I was saying that it might be better to kind of switch the wording instead of slower pace to something like speaking at an understandable pace or checking in with the DCF to make sure that they're able to understand it. And just so that the wording is a little bit more, I guess, like open to all people. But I really liked how in this section, you emphasize the importance of building a rapport with the DCF, because with training, that's like, we do it with our clients and we do it with our students. It's really important to build rapport with the staff as well. And you guys did a great job emphasizing that.
Sure. Great. Thanks. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like your idea about the wording.
And then the next section is the training timeline. This is kind of a section, and I know Candace went on today and made a bunch of changes, so some of this stuff might not be relevant anymore. But at the time of writing our written feedback, it was missing a time for the trainees to complete the knowledge acquisition test, and it was also missing a time for the trainees to complete the acceptability tests at the end, the training acceptability tests. Again, it was that question about the 90%. How will they not move forward and how it would work in a group setting. I think so. On yours, you had role play and you had rehearsal. So just a suggestion on changing role play to or rehearsal to the word role play and then combine those, which it looks like she already did. And then yeah, like just that the role play would include the active feedback. And so I think before those were two separate times, the rehearsal and feedback. So combining those and making it all role play. And then another suggestion was that there should be built-in time. I really did like that you guys included at the bottom of your timeline, you built in time like a week from now, we're going to check in and 2 weeks from now. I thought that was really clever. And I think that that will also alleviate a lot of stress from the trainees. But I wanted to suggest that you put in a time in your time on your timeline to go over what that coaching and performance feedback will look like, what they should expect when you walk in their room and show up to do an observation. What should they expect? Is there, will there be a meeting? What does the rating scale look like? What are you going to be looking for? Stuff like that. So building in a time to go over that at the very end of your training was a suggestion. And then your PSI was listed after, I believe it was listed as happening after lunch. But in your paragraph down at the bottom in section 5, it says that it should happen at the beginning. So just making sure that I think that my understanding of the PSI is that it's kind of like a preview of what you're going to be doing for that day. It doesn't go into like all the super nitty gritty details, but it's like a preview and then you go into it. So in my opinion, I believe it should be first, but just making sure that that your timeline matches what it says in section 5, like that little paragraph at the beginning that says like it will happen at the beginning. Make sure it happens at the beginning, and just making sure those align. And then within your timeline, making sure that like if it says the PSI, make sure you link your PSI. Or if it says another suggestion, like when you have like the video modeling section on the materials, it should have a link that links the trainer to the literature. So making sure that you go in all of the sections that you did the literature on, provide a link for the trainer to go and that will hyperlink back to that literature review for more information for the trainer.
Right.
Or the appendix that you can find it at, I think. And then I'm sorry, the appropriate appendix that goes along with that section. And then the DRL section, I suggested having more information that it will be included, and it looks like she added that in. And I suggested that there be a PowerPoint. I wasn't suggesting that you have to make a PowerPoint, just that chances are like the trainer will have a PowerPoint with that information on it. So just like listing that as a material would be appropriate.
Okay, I see.
And then, yeah, I liked how you mapped out the following observations. And then I noticed that the ethical codes were missing in this section. So I think this is one of those sections that, was section 1 through 5 or 1 through 4 that didn't have the table that you might want to double check that needs the table.
Okay, perfect.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for catching all those things. I think the timeline was one that we forgot to look back at and make sure everything was there. So I appreciate all your feedback on it.
I spent way too long on our timeline, like way too long. Took me forever.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys have any other questions on the timeline before we move on to section 3? Or are you ready to move on?
I think you guys did.
Yeah, I know we had a question just about that PowerPoint and what you meant by that. But yeah, you answered that. Were you going to say something, Kelly?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was the only thing.
Awesome. So for section 3, the function-based interventions, it was very strong paragraph and introduction. The comments that were left by our group members were just minor adjustments, and then that they did a great job writing the codes in their own words, and possibly connecting the ethical codes to the section in the description. But overall, that was good. And then the overview for the differential reinforcement, our group member said it was really well researched, that the articles and explanations were very thoroughly thought out. So that was awesome. And then they just made some little comments on the side. But overall, that was a really strong section. I went through the choosing between the differential reinforcement and non-contingent reinforcement section. I thought you guys did a great job explaining ableism. My recommendation would be moving the paragraph on ableism into the training acceptability area in section 2, and then potentially relating it to an able-free training environment. In my head, it kind of makes more sense to have it there, but that's something you guys could discuss with whoever wrote those 2 sections and decide as a group what makes the most sense. And then there was a paragraph. I can find it. 1 second, sorry guys. I think it might have gotten resolved actually, because I can't find it. But the comment that I had was that in the paragraph starting with prior to implementing treatment, to potentially discuss how ABA jargon is aversive to those outside of the field with examples. I think that's a really big part of just ABA and dealing with people outside of ABA is like terms like extinction and stuff like that are really aversive. So when I was reading through that, I think that in that paragraph, adding in a little explanation of that would give the audience like a really good holistic view of what you guys were talking about. But overall, it was really strong, and I really enjoyed reading that section.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
As far as your vocab list, it was very comprehensive. Just a minor suggestion would be like putting a space in between so it's easier on the eyes, but that's just totally preference, whatever you guys decide. One of our group members suggested rereading to make sure that the proper tense is being used, and the meanings of the words are coming across the way that you want them to.
Yeah, I did have a question on this one. So there were a few comments like add DTT, add FBA. We weren't sure what that meant.
Well, it looks like they've been added in. So it was like the discrete trial instruction didn't have this DDT in the FBA. It looks like that was added in after we put those comments. So it said like functional behavior assessment, but it didn't have FBA.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So we were just saying to add the acronym in, but it looks like someone went ahead and did that.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Sorry, that's confusing.
No, I know it's weird timing with like, when do we edit?
Yeah. I think we're all anxious to like just kind of fix it, you know? It's like, okay, I know what I need to fix now, but I can't do it. I get that.
Cool.
I was able to read through the client outcomes. I thought that one thing you guys did really strongly was explaining why you sometimes want to reinforce some of the behaviors. So, for example, you talked about elopement as a behavior and why sometimes it's appropriate for a child to elope. And I think you guys did a really fantastic job explaining that. And the measurement system, that whole explanation about rate and frequency was really, really well written, and something I didn't even consider putting into our project, but I thought it was a really good addition for your project. Some feedback is mainly for like APA formatting in the graph. So specifically, the dots and the lines in the graph are typically 1 point font. So that kind of just makes it a little bit thinner so you can see it a little bit better. Um, the y-axis should have every number listed, not just the even numbers. So the x-axis had it, just making sure it's the same on the y-axis. This is also specifically for graph number 1. The graph shouldn't go past the highest rate on the y-axis. So I believe the highest rate is 25. So that's where you stop the graph, not having it go past all the way up to 30. But on the x-axis, it's good. It stops at 19. So that one looks good. And then the tick marks should be 1 for every number. And like it's pretty much perfect on that x-axis. So just kind of having that transfer over to the y-axis, and then it'll be nice and uniform. And then non-examples. As I was reading through, for verbal protests, the non-examples listed fit the operational definition to me as I was reading it. So for example, the operational definition is verbal protest is any instance in which the client uses a verbal statement to escape or refuse a demand put in place by the DCF or caregiver, which is included but not limited to I don't want to, you can't make me to, no, etc. And then in the non-example, it says the DCS asks the client, do you want to play with the blocks? And the client responds, no. So technically, I would say that like that is a verbal protest, even though it's appropriate. So my recommendation would be, you can make it like a simple change. So you could say like a verbal protest would be speaking above the volume of like a class, like a regular speaking level. So it's kind of like a yelling-y protest, or finding a way to kind of differentiate that definition so that it fits that non-example better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
But overall, that looks good. And then for the second graph, we noticed that you guys had the ABAB design and you used it with 3 participants. So I guess my question is, or comment would be like, it seems as if it shows a functional relationship with just 1 participant, and having it be classic ABA design, or maybe even just changing it to being multiple baseline across participants. I'm kind of curious what the decision process was for having it be the 3 participants for an ABAB design. Did you guys want more examples for it? Is that what it was?
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
I think that we wanted to show multiple clients that it wasn't just effective with 1 client.
Okay. Yeah. I think, that's fine. You don't have to do that. Like you could totally show a functional relationship with one participant. With our training manual, we for this like made the graphs, we kind of like describe them for 1 participant, where yours kind of took like a more broad like approach. So I think that you're able to show the functional relationship, and like that's what's the most important. And then is this a withdrawal or a reversal design as well? That was one question that we had for it.
I'm not sure. I'll have to convene with the group But yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, even in the paragraph below, you guys could decide what would make the most sense. I think you could do either, honestly, and just putting that in there. It's a pretty easy fix. Um, but yeah, that was it for graph 2. Otherwise, it was nice and straightforward. So that was that was a good section to read through.
Okay. Sounds good. And just so you guys know, we've reached 20 minutes, not to rush
Okay.
you, just
We will
Okay.
go real fast.
you're good.
Okay, so just minor edits in the references. There were a couple that needed to be moved around based on ABC or alphabetical order. The ethical codes are missing. I know it seems silly to have ethical codes for references, but I do feel like she wanted them because it was in section 4. And then just make sure that your links within your references work. And then we can go through the appendices real quick. Make sure, so one thing that I noticed going through, I really did like that you, excuse me, hold on. I really did like how you broke down each appendices here and gave a brief summary. I thought that was a great idea. And I actually noticed by going through yours that we were missing that. So I'm like, yep, we got to add that. So thank you for your thoroughness with that. Just making sure that each section of your appendices has that introduction paragraph. And it needs to include how long that it will take based on your timeline. So you have to make sure that your timeline matches the paragraph on how long it will take. And you should also have a link to your literature review that connects with that appendix for each section. As far as the knowledge acquisition test, I thought you did a really great job. I liked your questions, and I also liked how you added scenarios, just minor edits included. And then the PSI, just make sure that your introduction matches your timeline. I think we already hit on that. And then also make sure that you have time set aside for it and you list how long it will take for you to complete the PSI per the timeline. So like how much time will you allow for it? And then make sure that there's a link to your literature review as well in this paragraph.
Right.
Um,
I did have a question on this.
Yes.
Did the link work for you guys? I noticed there was a comment about like restricted access. What happens when you click on the link?
The link worked for me. I couldn't get the sound to work on my computer for whatever reason, but other members of our group said it worked just fine. So I don't know if that was an issue with my computer.
Okay.
But yeah, it definitely worked for someone else's. So I'm like, I think it might have been I don't know, my computer error, but I did click through and read everything. And it seemed to work pretty well. Yeah.
Did it convert it to Google Slides on your?
Oh, I don't remember. I think that it might have been PowerPoint. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
I can relook at it when we get off and I can let you know.
Okay.
I think that the link had to do with the link to the literature review.
Okay. Perfect.
But it did work. As far as go ahead.
Yeah, the modeling looked really good. Our group members made a lot of really positive comments towards that. And then they made some minor adjustments, which are embedded in the document. The role play, they were kind of looking for a little bit more detail, specifically like what the error correction procedure would look like. And then the prompting would be another thing. One thing that we kind of, as a group, were like, oh, I don't know, like if you guys like thought this through, but the reinforcement in the role play was tickling, and we were saying that as like having the adults act out tickling might not be like the best choice for reinforcement. So maybe you guys could do like iPad or something else, because even though you'd use it like applied in the field. It might not be the best role play scenario. Um,
True.
and then the coaching and feedback, for task 1 and 2 of the treatment fidelity checklist, a lot of clients with DRLs may not need the behavior explained to them. So they might need a visual or some other form. So like, for example, there are a lot of kids who use DRLs for requesting the bathroom too much, but they may not be kids that speak vocally, and like a visual aid might be better. So kind of in that treatment fidelity, like rewording it so it's a little bit more broad, I guess, and just kind of saying like, oh, presenting the SD, or like clarifying the expectation in a more broader way for more of the clients.
Mhm.
Kristen, did you happen to go through the annotated bibliography?
Yeah, just to make one of our group members noted to make sure that the links within those references worked. And then to remove any personal comments. And I think that there might be a particular embedded comment on where she was meaning for this as well, but I don't think anything major. I think it just making sure that it's completely factual versus personal opinion. And then as far as the training acceptability tools, just make sure that the trainers know that it will be anonymous. I think that's the only feedback I have for that.
Yeah.
And then we noticed that the contingency contract was missing, and that's kind of one of those things. I don't know if it's necessarily like something that when you turn it in, maybe you just ask like, hey, do you want us to continue to use that? I don't know if you took it out for us, but just making sure like that's something that you might want to follow up so you don't get counted off for it. It doesn't really fit the manual per se, but like I just didn't want you guys to lose points for that.
Sure.
And then just overall document organization, just check your spacing. I know as you edit and make changes, you'll probably check that right before you turn it in. Make sure that there's no like unnecessary spaces. Make sure that your there was a lot of inconsistencies with the ethical codes. Make sure that all of your ethical codes have like a short summary of what the actual code is, like the first sentence, and then also a sentence that states how it connects. And so we usually use like the first sentence of the code, and then we wrote like one sentence about how it connected. So making sure that that is consistent throughout your document. And then, yeah, just making sure that you link everything throughout your document so it's easy to find and easy to navigate for the trainer in the moment.
Sure.
But you guys did a really great job overall. It was really cool to see someone else's project and how you guys did it. And so that was really great to see.
Yeah, I appreciated being able to read through it and being like, I didn't even think about something that way.
Yeah.
And you guys provided things and worded things in ways that I was like, oh, that is so smart. That is so clear. So I found it really useful to go through your document. I really appreciated that. You guys did a great job. You could tell that you worked really hard on it.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you guys for the
all your
feedback.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.